MySQL Workbench is a unified visual tool that can be used for SQL development and administration. I'm double-clicking on the MySQL Workbench icon to open that up. Here we see the list of MySQL connections. We only have one here, but there could be multiple. We have local instance MySQL 56 as the title, and you might remember seeing that MySQL 56 as the Windows service name from the Install MySQL video tutorial. I'm clicking on this, and it's asking us for a password. Notice we can only sign in here as the root user. We cannot sign in as Cindy, Joe, or John. I'll put in the root password of secret1. I'm not going to go into every detail the MySQL Workbench can do. I'm only going to spend a few videos getting acquainted with it, at least enough to create a project similar to what we did in videos 56 through 58. We notice over here on the left the databases that we created. There's ODB 81 through 84. These other three are the test databases I was talking about in those earlier videos. We've got Sequela, Test, and World. Let's look at the ODB 84 MySQL DB. If I click on this arrow, it turns from a sideways arrow to a downward pointing arrow. If I hover over ODB 84 MySQL DB, we'll notice there's a little eye and a wrench. If I click on the wrench, it opens up a window where it will allow us to specify the characteristics of the database. I'm not really interested in changing those, so I'll close this. And I'm coming over and clicking the eye. The eye opens up a tab that has multiple tabs underneath it. Here we've got the information about the database, the tables that are on this database, the columns by table on this database, as well as their types. If we have any indexes, we've got a few fields that we are not going to use in this tutorial series. We've got the grants here. Notice under grants that we've got John and Cindy, but we don't see Joe because Joe isn't given any access to the entire database, only a table on that database. Let's look at the tables. If I click the arrow next to tables, we see the two tables that are on the database. They've got an eye, a wrench, and they've got another thing that looks like a chart or a table. If I click on this table, it executes a select asterisk from and then the table name. And then down below shows us the data. If I click on the eye, it gives us some information about the table. And then the wrench. If I click on this wrench, we can actually make updates to our table. I'm going to turn off this bottom panel by clicking this icon up here on the right. Let's make a change to the table. I'll add in a field. MySQL Workbench put in a column name that I don't particularly care for. I'm going to delete that out and put in my own emp-addr. I'm going to leave the varchar type of 45. We could change that, but I'm happy with what we have. Then it has some fields over here with some check boxes. This is for the primary key, not null, unique index, a couple of fields that we're not going to use, auto increment, and a default value for that field. If I click on the primary key, it also puts on the not null. It also adds a checkbox down here. Notice we also have the column name here. Turning these off. We can add in a comment about this field if we like as well. This is for the employee address. That's my comment. To apply this change, I need to click Apply. If I click Revert, it will go back to what it was before I made any changes. Let's apply it. What this is doing is creating the SQL to make the change. Just like we saw in the LibreOffice tutorials, everything's based on SQL. Let's click Apply and Finish. And we have our new column. To see if this is added properly, if I come back over here to Tables, I can click on the columns and we see it right here, Employee Address. Going back up to the Table EMP, if I click on this Select Table again, it creates another window, and this time it has our new field. If we go back over here, we see this is our original. This is no longer valid. Let's X out. And I want to add some data to this employee address. I'm going to type in 1234 Derby Lane. I need to tab out so I can apply this. Again, we see that it creates the SQL for this command. I'm going to select it all. Control C to copy. And cancel out. And I'm going to revert this back as well. I'm coming way back over here to the query 1 where we have nothing in here, and I'm going to paste in the query. Right click, paste. We see that it's all on a single line. Up here we've got this broom, and if I hover over it, we see it tells us this is the Beautify Reformat the SQL script. Clicking that reformats our SQL similar to the way that I've reformatted all the SQL in those LibreOffice tutorials. We see that we want to update the employee table, setting the employee address to 1234 Derby Lane, where the employee ID equals 1. To execute this, I'll click on this lightning bolt. We need our lower window here back to show that it applied the changes. To make sure this works, I'm coming back over to our employee table and clicking on our table. There we see 1234 Derby Lane has been updated on the database. Going back over to query 1, the odd thing I want to point out here is instead of like we saw in LibreOffice where we had double quotes and single quotes, we have two different single quotes. Depending on your keyboard, you may have to look around a little bit to find the two different single quotes needed for this SQL.